Good evening. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Thursday, Yom HaMishi. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house on a Thursday? Yehud in South Carolina, Sharon in New Jersey, Paul in the Great Northwest, Melissa in Great Neck, Bella in Florida, Lucy in Minnesota, Joe in the Inland Empire, Guy in Ohio, Shandor in the Bronx, Belle in Texas, Karen in Northern California, in Indiana, Clay in South Carolina, Bill in Mid-Missouri, Lorraine in Texas, and Chaim in Florida. Welcome, everybody. Let's get squared away here. Lots to cover today. One daf, page 82 here in Tractate Sanhedrin, 24th volume of the Talmud, continuing our journey through chapter 9, which, God willing, we should finish tomorrow, I think. Yeah, I think we'll finish the chapter tomorrow with God's help, or possibly the day after. We're close to the end. Close to the end. And today, we're going to encounter some zealotry. Zealotry. And, you know, we definitely have good cause to be suspicious, to be wary of zealots who take the law into their own hands, go beyond the letter of the law, has a sound, a flavor of vigilante justice. But on the other hand, we've been talking about how reticent a rabbinic court, a Sanhedrin, a Beis Din, how reluctant they would be to impose a court-ordered execution, raising the bar so high, so many elements would have to be met where a court would actually issue a death penalty against a defendant. They made it so difficult, right, that a court that issued a death sentence more than once in 70 years was considered a murderous court. Okay, but if we just think about human nature, seems like, sadly, in any society, somebody who's deserving of a death penalty, if we're going to have a death penalty, seems like these kinds of crimes occur more than once in 70 years. So does this mean that all these murderers and psychopaths and sociopaths who, for whatever reason, they weren't warned properly, there weren't, enough witnesses there, the witnesses contradicted each other somehow, all the myriad technicalities that would cause the court to say, well, we can't impose a death penalty. Okay, and we've said that this is just a rabbinic court. I mean, when Jews are living in a country that is not their own, not a country governed by a Torah-based government, right? And even in the Holy Land, Second Temple period, I mean, the land was subject to other empires, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire. So there would be other laws, other courts, other people imposing a death penalty or harsh imprisonment, etc., for people commit such crimes, and we respect that law because the law of the land is the law according to our law. But nevertheless, if it is going to be a rabbinic court and a Torah-based system in command, and it's so difficult to impose a death penalty, and imprisonment generally doesn't seem to be something. Yesterday we talked about this vaulted chamber, but that seemed to be like an unusual and pretty extreme circumstance, not the normal thing, 3 years in prison, 5 years in prison, 10 years in prison, like we have in our system in modern times. So then do all these bad guys skate? Apparently not. And now we're finally going to get into that today. So, Mishnah number 8 here in chapter 9. With regard to one who kills a person not in the presence of witnesses, and it is impossible to judge him in court, the court places him into a vaulted chamber and feeds him sparing bread and scant water. Sounds like, oh, so, I mean, how do we know? First of all, how do we know this guy's guilty? Not witnesses. But if we have reason to know, and we're going to have reason to know that he really is guilty, so then what? I mean, this is a very general law. So then what? Imprisoned for life and very meager rations? No, that's not what it says either. Here's the Gemara. The Gemara asks, if there are no witnesses, from where do we know that he killed a person and he's liable to be punished at all? And Rav says, the Tana of our Mishnah, right? So the Tana of our Mishnah, whenever we say the Tana of our Mishnah, we're talking about a Mishnah that is unattributed, right? And an unattributed Mishnah almost always is the law, right? When it says that, Rabbi Akiva says, that may or may not be the law, because it might be just Rabbi Akiva's opinion, which is going to be different than other sages mentioned in the Mishnah, and that might be different than the majority. But an unattributed Mishnah, that generally is the law, right? And now we're talking about, who actually is saying the words, right? In other words, who is the speaker in this Mishnah? But when there is no name, we're generally saying this is the voice of the sages, but we'll talk about that as the Tana. A Tana is a rabbi of the period in time of the Mishnah. So, Second Temple up through about the year 200 of the Common Era. That's when the Mishnah was set down. Next level of commentary is the Gemara. The Gemara plus the Mishnah is the Talmud. But sages of the period after the Mishnah was redacted and closed, so to speak, in the year 200, the later sages from the year 200 to about the year 500, they're called Amoraim, plural of Amora. Right? So a Tana of a Mishnah or an Amora of the Gemara is generally how we're referring more specifically to the sages. Okay, so Rav says, the Tana of the Mishnah is speaking about a case of disjointed testimony, where the witnesses were not together, and they witnessed the murder from different vantage points. This means they're not actually a pair of witnesses. And the court cannot convict a person for committing a murder based on that type of testimony, even though it is clear that the witnesses are telling the truth. Right? So the laws of evidence in a rabbinic court are very demanding. This is a situation where everyone who's there in that courtroom will say, well, okay, we know what happened. This is the murderer, and he killed that victim. So why can't we punish him? Because legal flaw, right? Technicality, basically a legal technicality. Now, in that situation, is it justice to let this guy walk? We all know he did it. It's really just a technicality. So then what happens? Then what happens is this Mishnah, he's placed in a vaulted chamber and given basically a starvation diet. And Shmuel says, the Tana of the Mishna is speaking about a case where the witnesses testified that they witnessed the murder, but there was no forewarning, and therefore the court cannot convict him. Again, we've said that the Beis Din will only issue a death penalty if the defendant was warned right before he committed the murder. Hey, if you kill that man and a court finds you guilty, you're going to be subject to a death penalty. And he does it anyway. Well, how often does that happen in the real world? Probably never, or almost never. Does that mean all those defendants get off? Apparently not. And Rav Chisda says that Avimi says the Tana of the Mishnah is speaking of a case where the witnesses contradicted each other in the examinations that involve matters peripheral to the murder, but did not contradict each other in the interrogations, which are integral to the murder. Right? So there was some disagreement between the witnesses. That would be enough so that the rabbinic court imposed death penalty cannot apply, but common sense, not an important detail. So therefore, it is clear to the court that the accused is guilty, and consequently, they place him in the vaulted chamber. As we learned in the Mishna on page 40a, there was an incident, and Ben Zakkai examined the witnesses with regard to the stems of figs on the fig tree beneath which the murder took place. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai questioned the witnesses about the thickness of the stems in order to determine whether they would contradict each other in this peripheral detail in order to save the accused. And in that situation, he was able to do it. And maybe there was a reason, some kind of, extra letter of the law reason in that situation to save the defendant, which the judges could identify. But is that what we want in every case? That if there's any kind of legal technicality that the bad guy skates, that he does? We don't want that. The Mishnah teaches, when we apply this punishment, what is it? So is this imprisonment forever with very bad rations? What is it? The Mishnah teaches, and feeds him sparing bread and scant water. So now the Gemara asks, well, what is different about this Mishnah that the Tana teaches that the court gives the defendant or the convicted, the accused, let's say, sparing bread and scant water in the vaulted chamber? And what is different about our previous Mishnah that we read yesterday, where the Tana taught that the court feeds him barley until his belly ruptures? Are these two different punishments? And Rav Sheshes says, no, both this and that are the same punishment. First, the court gives him sparing bread and scant water until his intestines contract due to his starvation diet. And then the court feeds him barley bread that expands in his innards until his belly ruptures. Now, is that definitely going to happen like that? There's a lot of variables here. What they're saying is, okay, we can't apply stoning or strangulation or burning or beheading. The court imposed death penalty doesn't work. But we're not, we all understand that this is a murderer. And we really cannot allow him to come out and rejoin society. So yeah, it's like we're sending him to one of those prisons in El Salvador where people disappear and never come out. And the only people who go there are absolute murdering psychopaths who we don't want in society. Now, you can say, whoa, that's a system that really could be subject to abuse. And maybe the best intentions of people in creating such a place was to only remove the most evil and vile psychopaths from society. But if the judges are not entirely honest, if the politicians are not entirely honest, who knows who's going to end up there? We don't want to live in such a system. Good argument. Valid argument. But here, what we're talking about is there's also the other side of that argument that we're not going to let those evil psychopaths back into society. So who is going to make these kinds of decisions? We have some level of trust in our sages, right? The judges of a rabbinic court, they are people who have spent their lives studying the law and living in the most righteous manner. and have been elevated to that position through tremendous difficulty. These are not political appointees, right? I mean, it's definitely people who have risen to the top of both Torah knowledge and righteousness, and it seems like they would make such a decision. At any rate, I don't make the laws. God makes the laws, and the sages, bring the laws into the world, into action, and this is how it seems to work. So they don't kill the guy, but they feed him this diet. Now, maybe if God wants him to live, okay, he'll survive on the starvation diet, and he won't overeat when he gets some barley bread and his stomach will rupture. I mean, there's no guarantee that that's an actual type of death penalty, but it certainly seems clear that we're not going to coddle that person and certainly not release him out there where he may kill again. And that is Mishnah number 8. Now Mishnah number 9 in this chapter. With regard to one who steals a kazva, and one who curses with a sorcerer, and one who engages in intercourse with an Aramaen woman, zealots strike him and kill him. Although the Torah does not say that one who performs one of these actions is liable to be executed, it is permitted for anyone who zealously takes the vengeance of the Lord to do so. In the case of a priest who performed the temple service in a state of ritual impurity, his priestly brethren do not bring him to court for judgment. Rather, the young men of the priesthood remove him from the temple courtyard and pierce his skull with pieces of wood. Now, this would only apply when the Holy Temple is standing in Jerusalem. This has nothing to do with synagogues, outside, in any other time in history. So nothing like this has applied for 2,000 years with regard to the priests removing one of their own from the Holy Temple. Now, in the case of a non-priest who performed the service in the temple, Rabbi Akiva says his execution is by strangulation, meaning a legitimate court-imposed death penalty. But the rabbis say he is not executed with a court-imposed death penalty. Rather, he is liable to receive death at the hand of heaven, charis. That's Mishnah number 9. Now, what is a kazva? One who steals a kazva? That'd be a Jew who steals one of the service vessels used in the Holy Temple. One who curses with a sorcerer. We're going to talk about what that is, but we've seen that already for engaging in sorcery or blasphemy. There is a court-imposed death penalty that this doesn't quite qualify for, but is certainly similar to. And this engaging in intercourse with an Aramaen woman, the sage is going to have more to say about that. So let's move into the Gemara. The Gemara asks, what is the kazva mentioned in the Mishnah? And Rav Yehuda says it is a term used to describe any service vessel utilized in the temple. And likewise it is stated, and the jars, kesos, with which to pour libations. We see that in Numbers 4:7. And the Gemara asks, and where is it intimated that one who steals a service vessel from the temple, the Holy Temple, is liable to be killed by zealots? Where do we get this idea? So the Gemara answers that it is intimated in the verse, quote, but they shall not come to see the sacred items as they are being covered, kevala, lest they die. That's Numbers 4, verse 20. So the Gemara interprets the term kevala as one who ingests, i.e. one who takes, like steals. And the verse thereby teaches that one who steals one of the temple's service vessels is liable to be killed. It's perhaps not that surprising, right? I mean, the Holy Temple, when it was operating properly, was a place of atonement and service and holy worship on behalf of the whole Jewish people, and indeed on behalf of the whole world, right? This is the axis mundi, and it was really not just on behalf of the Jewish people, but there were, especially during Sukkot, the Sukkot holiday in the fall, sacrifices were brought on behalf of all the nations of the world. And this was a place that had to be maintained at the highest levels of holiness. And a thief who would come and steal a service vessel from the Holy Temple, that is very similar to somebody who just blasphemes or curses the name of God, God forbid. He's obviously dismissing everything, the holiness of the temple, of God, of Judaism, of Torah. So it's perhaps not that surprising that such a crime would lead to a death penalty, if not directly through a court, then perhaps this other route of the zealots. The Mishnah teaches, and one who curses with a sorcerer is among those liable to be killed by zealots. So Rav Yosef teaches that the reference is to one who says, let the sorcerer strike his sorcerer. Meaning, one who curses God in the name of idol worship. Right? So somebody who's so into worshiping his idols that he takes it a step further. Not only is he committing idolatry, but in the name of his false god, he levels a curse, God forbid, at the Holy One above. Now, he does not explicitly say God's name. That's why he's not a blasphemer. Doesn't qualify directly for that death penalty. He does not explicitly say God's name, but he believes that a sorcerer can curse the sorcerer who provided him with his powers, meaning the divine presence, right? Where does anybody get anything? They get their life from God. So he believes that somebody who was created by God has the power to curse God, an obvious falsehood, and in this case, one meriting a death through zealotry. So the rabbis, and some say that it was Rabbah, the son of Mari, say that the reference is to one who says, let the sorcerer strike him, i.e. the individual with whom he is quarreling, and his creator and his provider. And since he curses God, it is permitted for zealots to kill him. Excuse me. Now, the Mishnah teaches that one who engages in intercourse with an Aramaen woman is among those liable to be killed by zealots. And Rav Kahana asked of Rav, now we're on page 82a, we started on 81b, if zealots did not strike him, what is the law? And Rav forgot momentarily. Okay, so just before we go any further, I'll tell you where the law ended up on this question. One who engages in intercourse with an Aramaen woman. What's going on here? So the way this ended up being codified in Jewish law in Shulchan Aruch, one who engages in intercourse, now we're talking about a Jewish man who engages in intercourse with a Gentile woman, Jewish man, non-Jewish woman having sexual relations. Whether he marries her or not, if he engages in intercourse with her in the presence of 10 or more Jews, zealots strike him, and whoever kills him is praiseworthy. Obviously, the sages don't like intermarriage. Perhaps equally obviously, got to be a pretty rare thing that some Jewish man is having sex with a non-Jewish woman in front of 10 men. Like, that doesn't seem like something that will happen very often. If it did happen, and zealots struck him down, then under Jewish law, that would be okay. Under American law, yeah, that would not be okay. So, and I don't think under the law of any nation in the modern world, and therefore we don't do it. We don't say it's okay. It does not happen because the law of the land is the law. But the underlying attitude, I didn't write this. I'm just the messenger. Okay, so now the Gemara continues. Right? Rav Kahana asked of Rav, if zealots did not strike him, okay, so the Jewish man is not allowed to have sexual relations with a non-Jewish woman. He should not be doing that. So if he did it, the law ended up with doing it in front of 10 people. We haven't mentioned that yet in our discussion in the Gemara. Okay, well, let's say there's no zealots around to kill him. And by the way, this would only be in flagrante. That sort of license for the zealot to kill these people would only be while it's happening, not after the fact. But if they didn't, so then what is the law? So Rav forgot that which he learned through tradition concerning this matter. He forgot. He couldn't remember what the law is. So they read this verse to Rav Kahana in his dream. It's like a question came up in the study hall and he just didn't know what the answer was. And then in his dream, the following verses came to him from Malachi, the book of Malachi in the Bible. Quote, Judah has dealt treacherously, and an abomination is committed in Israel and in Jerusalem, as Judah has profaned the sacred of the Lord, which he loves, and has engaged in intercourse with the daughter of a strange god. And Rav Kahana came and said to Rav, this is what they read to me in my dream. So Rav then remembered that which he learned through tradition and said, Judah has dealt treacherously. This is a reference to the sin of idol worship. And likewise it says, but as a wife who treacherously departs her husband, you have dealt treacherously with me, house of Israel, says the Lord. Jeremiah. What was Jeremiah all about? Late First Temple period, when the children of Israel, tragically, so many of them were straying after idolatry, false gods, the Baal, Asherah, etc., and it became so bad that eventually, right, the Jews lost the protection of the Holy One above. Nebuchadnezzar came, destroyed the first temple, Babylonian exile, etc. Late years of that period, prophet Jeremiah is saying, stop what you're doing. Stop doing this. You're going to really upset God, and he's going to remove his protection from the Jewish people. That all happened. So that's Jeremiah warning the people to stop straying after gods. And very often, like, what is this urge to bow down to a statue made of wood or stone? It's ridiculous. Why would anybody want to do that? Why would anybody who's been raised on the stories of God, right? The God of the universe, the unseeable, unknowable, infinite God of the universe, who brought us out of Egypt with miracles and gave us the Torah. Why would anybody turn away from God and want to bow down to a statue? Why? Because sex, right? The primary reason to do that was very often sex, because the priests of those other religions were like, yeah, hey, come bow before our idols and join in the festivities in our temple, which were very sexual in nature. And we don't have the same laws that you guys have. And, it's not that you're limited to only man and woman, husband and wife. Yeah, you could do all kinds of fun stuff over here. And all you got to do is bow to the statue, which is to say, turn your back on that, very prudish God who tells you right and wrong all the time. You can't do this, you can't do that. It's a libertine license to go follow their physical bliss. And that's what you're hearing here. So much of it was, chasing Jewish men, chasing after non-Jewish women, but really was they were bowing to the idols so they could go after, these women who, it's just all outside of marriage, all fornication, all pursuing pleasure, right? Hedonism. So Jeremiah said, dealt treacherously with me, house of Israel, says the Lord. And an abomination is committed in Israel and in Jerusalem. This is a reference to male homosexual intercourse. Another thing prohibited under Torah, permitted in these other idolatrous places. And likewise it says, you shall not lie with a man as one lies with a woman. It is an abomination, Leviticus 18:22. And furthermore, as Judah has profaned the sacred Kodesh of the Lord. This is a reference to a prostitute. And likewise it says, there shall be no harlot, Kadesha, of the daughters of Israel, Deuteronomy 23:18, and has engaged in intercourse with the daughter of a strange god. This is a reference to one who engages in intercourse with a Gentile woman. And it is written thereafter with regard to those enumerated in the verse, may the Lord excise the man who does this, who calls and who answers from the tents of Jacob, and he who sacrifices a meal offering to the Lord of hosts, Malachi 2:12. So the Gemara interprets this verse. If he is a Torah scholar, he will have neither one among his descendants who calls and initiates discourse among the sages, nor one who answers among the students, i.e. one who is capable of answering questions posed by the sages. And if he is a priest, he will not have among his descendants a son who sacrifices a meal offering to the Lord of hosts. Right? Meaning, chorus, some kind of chorus, excision, death at the hands of the heavenly court. What does it mean? Life cut short, a lesser portion or no portion in the world to come. But additionally, for Torah scholars and priests, that their descendants will be cut off from being Torah scholars and priests. Rabbi Chia bar Avuya says, with regard to anyone who engages in intercourse with a Gentile woman, it is as though he married the object of idol worship itself, as it is written, and has engaged in intercourse with the daughter of a strange god. Does a strange god have a daughter? They're just idols of wood and stone. Rather, this is a reference to one who engages in intercourse with a Gentile woman who is an adherent of a strange god, of some form of idolatry. Now, the Gemara cites another of Rabbi Chia bar Avuya's statements. Rabbi Chia bar Avuya says, it was written on the skull of Jehoiakim, I'm not sure what the English or in Hebrew, we'll just say it in Hebrew, right? Jehoiakim. This was a very bad king, very evil king, wicked king of Judea, not one of the righteous kings. One of the late First Temple period kings who led the nation astray and into idolatry. So says Rabbi Chia bar Avuya, it was written on the skull of Jehoiakim, the king of Judea, this and yet another. There was writing literally on the skull of this once king of Israel, of Judea, the words this and yet another. What does it mean? This indicated that he will suffer a punishment in addition to the punishment that he already received. So the Gemara relates, the grandfather of Rabbi Perida, Rabbi Chia bar Avuya, found a skull that was cast at the gates of Jerusalem, and upon it was written this and yet another. And he buried it, and then it emerged from beneath the soil, and he buried it again, and then it emerged from beneath the soil again. And he said, this is the skull of Jehoiakim. As it is written in his regard, Jeremiah 22:19, this is the prophet Jeremiah cursing this wicked king of Judea. With the burial of a donkey he shall be buried, drawn, and cast beyond the gates of Jerusalem. Right? So remember that one who commits idolatry can be subject to a death penalty. One who incites others to idolatry, relaxed rules of evidence, much easier to bring him to the death penalty. A king who not only incites others to idolatry, but basically commands them to commit idolatry is just the highest rung of wickedness. And so Jeremiah did not hold back in any way, cursing that wicked king. And, you don't want to be cursed by Jeremiah. So this curse was completely manifest in history. So what happened? Rabbi Chia bar Avuya said, this Jehoiakim, he is a king. This is the sage, I guess the grandfather of Rabbi Chia, who found this skull. Right? They found the skull and they tried to bury it, and it kept coming out of the ground with this writing. This and right. What was the words again? This and yet another. This and yet another. So what does it mean? Like, in other words, that it wasn't enough that he was executed, that his body would be subject to continuing degradation well beyond the death of Jehoiakim. So it seems like they buried him somewhere near the gates of Jerusalem, but his body, his bones would not stay buried. He would not rest in peace because of this curse of Jeremiah. Right? So now Rabbi Chia bar Avuya says he is a king. He was a king after all, a king of Israel, or a king of the Jewish people in Judea. And it is not proper conduct to treat him contemptuously. So he took the skull, wrapped it in silk, and placed it in a chest. His wife came on another day and saw the skull, and she went out and told her neighbors and asked them what it was. So the neighbors said to her, if he has a skull wrapped in silk in a chest in the house, well, this must be the skull of the first wife to whom he was married, as he has not forgotten her and he keeps her skull in her memory. And this angered the wife of Rabbi Chia. And so she kindled the oven and burned the skull. And when Rabbi Chia, the son of Avuya, came and learned what she had done, he said, that is the fulfillment of that which is written about him. This and yet another. Having his remains cast beyond the gates of Jerusalem did not complete the punishment of Yehoiakim. He suffered additional indignity of having his remains burned, even many years after his death, right? From which we can infer that it's the worst kind of degradation, desecration, and indignity for a Jewish corpse to be burned. That would only be appropriate for such a vile and wicked king as Yehoiakim. Any other Jewish person after they die, the body needs to be buried, not cremated. When Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he said, the court of the Hasmoneans, right? The story of Hanukkah, the Hasmoneans who won their battle against the Greek, that later Greek Empire, the Syrian Greek Empire, and were able to reconsecrate the Holy Temple and then establish the holiday of Hanukkah. This is the Hasmoneans. So the court of the Hasmoneans issued a decree that one who engages in intercourse with a Gentile woman is liable due to his violation of prohibitions represented by the letters Nun, Shin, Gimel, and Aleph. In other words, a Jewish man who has sexual relations with a non-Jewish woman is going to be in violation of 4 prohibitions. He wouldn't technically be violating those prohibitions just by doing this. So that's why they needed a decree to say, it was like a sort of a rabbinic decree saying, yeah, if you do this, not only did you do something prohibited, but we're going to find you guilty of the following. It's as if you had intercourse with a menstruating woman, right? Which Jewish husbands and wives are not permitted to each other during her menses and for 7 days afterward. So it's like sleeping with a Gentile woman is like you did that. Although by Torah law, there is actually no impurity of menstruation with regard to Gentiles. Obviously, non-Jewish women menstruate, but the laws of Tuma and Tahara, ritual purity and impurity, only apply to Jews. It's only a concept within Jewish law. But here they extended that concept to non-Jews just to render this Jewish man guilty of violating that prohibition if he has relations with a non-Jewish woman. He is also liable for intercourse with a Canaanite slave, right? Now, a non-Jewish woman isn't necessarily a Canaanite slave, but the Hasmonean said it's as if you slept with a Canaanite slave if you had sex with any non-Jewish woman. Also for having intercourse with a Gentile woman, which is already on the books, and with a married woman. Even if she happens to be single, it's like you slept with a married woman. When Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he said he is liable due to his violation of prohibitions represented by Nun, Shin, Gimel, and Zion. Ravin agreed with Rav Dimi that the Hasmoneans decreed that one who engages in intercourse with a Gentile woman is liable for engaging in intercourse with a menstruating woman, with a Canaanite slave, and with a Gentile woman, the actual crime. He adds that the individual is liable for engaging in intercourse with a zona, which is a prostitute. But he disagrees with Rav Dimi and holds that one is not liable due to the violation of the prohibition against involving matrimony. In other words, we're not going to say that having a Jewish man sleep with a non-Jewish woman, even if she's unmarried, it's like he committed adultery, because the halachic framework of matrimony under Jewish law doesn't apply to non-Jews, right? In other words, non-Jews get married, obviously, but they don't get married under the laws of Moses and Torah and the Jewish people. They have their own laws for marriage, so that wouldn't apply in terms of saying that this guy committed adultery under Torah law. Why would we, even as a time of, why did the Hasmoneans make these decrees? Because the Jews were straying badly and creating a national danger. Right? When enough Jews are turning their backs on God and Torah, the Jewish people as a whole are in danger. So they were trying to bring people back from that precipice. And that's why they were issuing these, larger emergency decrees, as it were. So why not say that it's like they committed adultery if they slept with a non-Jewish woman? But says this sage, their relationships, the other more, Rav Dimi, who says that it is like committing adultery, says that Gentiles certainly do not forsake their wives. Therefore, the status of the wife of a Gentile is that of a married woman. So we're not going to say that he didn't commit adultery if he slept with a married Gentile. He did, according to Rav Dimi. Now, Rav Chisda says, concerning one who comes to consult with the court, when he sees a Jewish man engaging in intercourse with a Gentile woman, which is not a death penalty offense, right? We're saying it might be subject to a zealot, death by zealots, certainly not death by a rabbinic court. So someone comes to the court and says, can I commit zealotry and kill this guy who's in the process of having relations with a non-Jewish woman? So the answer is, well, the court does not instruct him to do that, right? Concerning one who comes to consult with the court when he sees a Jewish man engaging in intercourse with a Gentile woman, the court does not instruct him that it is permitted to kill the transgressor. And it was also stated that Rabbi Bar Chana says, that Rabbi Yochanan says, concerning one who comes to consult with the court does not instruct him that it is permitted to kill the Jewish man engaging in intercourse with a Gentile woman. Moreover, if Zimri, the son of Salu, had separated himself from the woman, and only then Pinchas killed him, Pinchas would have been executed for killing him, because it is permitted for zealots to kill only while the transgressor is engaged in the act of intercourse. Now, the whole discussion which follows, and this idea that a zealot might be permitted to kill a Jewish man who is in the process of having sexual relations with a non-Jewish woman, is all based on this story that happened when the children of Israel were in the wilderness, right, having come out of slavery in Egypt. We were constantly in the revealed presence of God, who in his great mercy and kindness and love had taken us out of Egypt with signs and wonders and miracles, parted the sea, drowned our oppressors, the Egyptian army, in it, feeding us constantly, manna, water from a miraculous spring, the clouds of glory, exercising perfect temperature control. I mean, in that situation, to just say, yeah, not for me, I'll just go do whatever I feel like, quite an insult to the Holy One above who's giving us everything. And it was in that context that Pinchas, the grandson of Aaron, the brother of Moses, Aaron, the first Kohen Gadol, the first high priest, undertook this act of zealotry when he killed Zimri, while Zimri was in flagrante, right, having sex with this woman Cosby, in the presence of the whole congregation, who had already been punished for terrible, terrible stuff of idolatry, a bunch of Jewish men running off after Midianite women who had seduced them to go commit idolatry again. It was more about the relations that they could have than, bowing before these statues. But the Lord did not like it, and there was a plague breaking out against the people. And who stopped the plague? Pinchas the Zealot, right? So it was in that context. And he literally, and the Torah says in Numbers 25, verses 1 through 9, is the story. He drives this spear through the two of them, right? Through Zimri and Cosby, kills them. And, he was not punished for this extrajudicial killing, lynching, as it were. And in fact, God said, good job. And I give him, Pinchas, my covenant of peace. And he, who had not yet been anointed to serve as a priest, because he was a grandson of Aaron, received the right directly from God to become a priest and be anointed as a Kohen. And eventually he would be a Kohen Gadol. Now, but even so, what we're learning here is the limitations on zealotry. This is not something we encourage. And now the sage is going to explain all the limitations on zealotry. So let's get into it. So moreover, if Zimri had separated himself from the woman, right? If they were not in the act of doing it, if they finished and separated, and then Pinchas had killed him, then Pinchas would have been executed. He would have been liable to the death penalty for committing murder, because it is permitted for zealots to kill only when the transgressor is engaged in the act of intercourse. Furthermore, if Zimri would have turned and killed Pinchas in self-defense after the act was over, he would not have been executed for killing him, as Pinchas would be considered the rodef, the pursuer, the one coming illegally to try and kill Zimri. So if Zimri killed Pinchas, he would have been fine. It would have been a legitimate act of self-defense. One is allowed to kill a pursuer in self-defense, provided that the pursued is not liable to be executed by the court. And once he was no longer doing it. Now it is stated, and Moses said to the judges of Israel, each of you shall slay his men who have adhered unto Baal Peor, at Numbers 25:5. Now the tribe of Shimon went to Zimri, the son of Salu. Zimri was a chieftain of the tribe of Shimon, their leader, and they said to him, they are judging cases of capital law and executing us, and you are sitting and are silent? In other words, a bunch of members of the tribe of Shimon had run off after these Midianite women and were committing idolatry. And then Moses ordered that those people who were doing that should be killed to save the rest of the nation from this unchecked plague that God had sent against them. Right? But now the members of the tribe of Shimon are complaining, hey, they're just killing us. Not just killing us, right? Moses, who has perfect vision of what's going on there, he's being told by God what to do. He's ordering them to have them killed. But okay, the tribe of Shimon is complaining. And they're saying to their leader, Zimri, that they are judging cases of capital law and executing us, and you're just sitting there not doing anything. So what did Zimri do? He arose and he gathered 24,000 people from the children of Israel. And he went to Kazbi, the daughter of Zur, the princess of Midian, right, this non-Jewish princess, and he said to her, submit to me and engage in intercourse with me. I guess he's trying to make a test case to show that this is okay. Okay. She said to him, I am the daughter of a king, and this is what my father commanded me. Submit only to the greatest of them. Well, Zimri said to her, he too, referring to himself, is the head of a tribe. And moreover, he, meaning himself, is greater than Moses, as he is second from the womb, right? Who are the children of Jacob, also known as the children of Israel? Oldest was Reuben, second oldest, Shimon, right? So Zimri is a descendant of Shimon, the second oldest. Who is Moses a descendant of? Levi. Reuben, Shimon, Levi. Levi's the third born. So Zimri's arguing that he, as a descendant of Shimon, is actually more noble, more aristocratic than Moses, who is a descendant of the third son, Levi. Not a good argument, but it's the one he's making. Moreover, he is greater than Moses, as he is second from the womb, and Moses is third from the womb. So then he seized her, right? Zimri seizes Kazbi by her forelock and brought her before Moses. And Zimri said to Moses, son of Amram, is this woman forbidden or permitted? Well, obviously Moses would say forbidden. So now Zimri says, and if you say that she is forbidden, well, as for the daughter of Jethro, to whom you are married, Moses, who permitted her to you? Is the daughter of Yisro a Jewish woman? Apparently not. So how is she permitted to you? Is the argument that he's making. Now, she probably went through a conversion, and then of course she became permitted to Moses. But this is Zimri making an argument. Now, the law with regard to the proper course of action when encountering a Jewish man engaging in intercourse with a Gentile woman eluded Moses. He was confused. It's like, well, did we do a proper conversion with Zipporah, right, with his wife? Now he's not sure. He doesn't know what to do. He's paralyzed. All of the members of the Sanhedrin bawled in their weeping. And that is the meaning of that which is written. And they are crying at the entrance of the tent of meeting in Numbers 25, verse 6. And it is written thereafter, Numbers 25, verse 7, and Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw and arose from the midst of the congregation and took a spear in his hand. And the Gemara asks, what did Pinchas see that led him to arise and take action? And Rav says, he saw the incident taking place before him, and he remembered the law. He said to Moses, brother of the father of my father, right? Because Moses was the brother of his grandfather Aaron. Did you not teach me this during your descent from Mount Sinai? That one who engages in intercourse with a Gentile woman, zealots strike him? That's the law of the Mishna that we're talking about now. This is suggesting that this was a law given orally by God to Moses at Mount Sinai, and that he started transmitting that law there. It's not written explicitly in the Torah, but we know that there are a bunch of laws that are not written explicitly in the Torah that were given by God to Moses at Mount Sinai that are the crux or the core of the oral tradition. Among those laws is what is tefillin. Right? Tefillin is not described, the black box, the black straps, etc., that we put on our forehead and arm when we pray in the mornings, and that Jewish men used to wear all the time. The Torah only says, these words shall be a sign upon your a hand and a symbol before your eyes. How is that tefillin? Tefillin was revealed to Moses at Sinai. So apparently this law also, that zealots can kill a man who's engaging in a Jewish man who's engaging in relations with a non-Jewish woman, apparently it was given to Moses, and Moses transmitted to Pinchas, and now Pinchas is reminding him, did you not teach me this during your descent from Mount Sinai? When who engages in intercourse with a Gentile woman, zealots strike him. And Moses said to him, well, let the one who reads the letter be the agent to fulfill its contents. Right, you reminded me. Go to it. And Shmuel says, Pinchas saw and considered the meaning of the verse. There is neither wisdom nor understanding nor counsel against the Lord, from Proverbs 21:30, which the sages interpreted to mean, anywhere there is desecration of the Lord's name, one does not show respect to the teacher. In those situations, one need not consult his teacher, but must immediately proceed to right the wrong that is transpiring. Therefore, he took the spear and he took immediate action. And Rabbi Yitzchak says that Rabbi Eliezer says he saw that an angel came and destroyed among the people in punishment for the sin of Zimri. And he realized that he must take immediate action to save the people from the plague that the Lord had sent, because so many Jewish men were running after these Midianite women. And now Zimri, at least those other Jewish men who were committing that sin had left the encampment and were in some private place, with these Midianite women and committing idolatry. Zimri had brought the woman into the encampment, in the presence of the Lord and the holiness and the vessels and the high priest and Moses himself. Everyone else was just standing there shocked. Pinchas is like, are you guys kidding? This got to stop right now or we're all going to die. And he took the spear. It is written with regard to Pinchas, he arose from amidst the assembly and he took a spear in his hand. From here, where it is written that he took the spear only after he arose from the assembly, it is derived that one does not enter the study hall with a weapon. And the assembly in this context is referring to the seat of the Sanhedrin. Pinchas removed the blade of the spear and he placed it in his garment, and he held the shaft of the spear like a walking stick, and he was walking, leaning on his walking stick, the shaft of the spear. And once he reached the tribe of Shimon, he said, where do we find that the tribe of Levi is greater than that of Shimon? If all the members of your tribe submit to the temptation of the women of Moab, I may do so as well. So after hearing that statement, the members of the tribe of Shimon said, let him come in. He's like, what? He's one of us. He too is entering to attend to his needs and engage in intercourse with the Moabite women. They rejoiced and said, apparently the pious and God-fearing have permitted this matter, as Pinchas is one of them. They thought, hey, cool. This guy who's a real, holy roller wants to come and be with these Midianite and Moabite women like us, and they let him in. Rabbi Yochanan says 6 miracles, now we're on page 82b, 6 miracles were performed for Pinchas when he killed Zimri. One is that Zimri should have separated himself from Cosby, and he did not separate himself. Had he done so, it would have been prohibited for Pinchas to kill him. And another miracle is that Zimri should have spoken and alerted the members of his tribe to come to his assistance, and he did not speak. And another miracle is that Pinchas directed the spear precisely to the male genitals of Zimri and the female genitals of Cosby, so that the reason that he killed them would be evident. And another miracle is that Zimri and Cosby did not fall from the spear. And another miracle is that an angel came and raised the lintel of that chamber so that Pinchas could emerge holding them aloft on the spear. And another miracle is that an angel came and caused destruction among the people, distracting them from interfering with the actions of Pinchas. Pinchas came and slammed them on the ground before the omnipresent, before God, and said before God, Master of the universe, will 24,000 of the children of Israel fall due to these sinners? As it is stated, and those that died in the plague were 24,000. Numbers 25:9. And that is the meaning of that which is written. And Pinchas stood and wrought judgment, and the plague was halted. Rabbi Elazar says, it is not stated in the verse, and prayed, vayitpalel. Rather, it is stated, vayefalel. This teaches that Pinchas, as it were, wrought judgment, pelilut, with his creator. The ministering angels sought to push him away because he spoke harshly to God. Blessed be he when he said, are you going to kill 24,000 people because of these sinners? Let me just kill the sinners. Right? But he was challenging God. So the angels wanted to punish Pinchas for speaking rudely to God. What did God do? The Holy One, blessed be he, said to the angels, leave him be. He is a zealot, the son of a zealot, from the tribe of Levi, who was zealous in avenging the violation of his sister Dinah. He is an alleviator of wrath, son of an alleviator of wrath, a descendant of Aaron, who alleviated the wrath of God during the plague that followed the assembly of Korach. And the tribes began to demean Pinchas. Did you see this son of Puti, so called because his mother was one of the daughters of Putiel? See Exodus 6:25. And they interpreted homiletically as Yisro, the father of his mother, according to one rabbinic tradition, fattened calves for idol worship, right? That Moses' father-in-law had committed idol worship. And he impudently killed the prince of a tribe of Israel without a trial, this Pinchas did. Who is this Pinchas, right? Who's a descendant on his mother's side of Yisro, who was an idolater. Who does he think he is? He's going to kill one of the princes of a tribe of Israel by killing Zimri, extrajudicially. What right does he have to do that? And in response, the verse comes and provides his lineage as not Pinchas, the great-grandson of Yisro on his mother's side, but rather Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron, the high priest. And it is due to that lineage that he zealously executed Zimri. And the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Moses, be the first to greet Pinchas with a blessing of peace, to honor him before the people. As it is stated, therefore say, I hereby give to him my covenant of peace. Numbers 25:12. And it is stated, and it shall be unto him and his descendants after him a covenant of eternal priesthood, because he was zealous for his God, and he atoned for the children of Israel. And this atonement that he facilitated is worthy of continuing to atone forever. Now, with regard to the same matter, Rav Nachman says that Rav says, what is the meaning of that which is written, the thigh-belted greyhound Zarzir, or the he-goat, and the king against whom none can rise, Proverbs 30:31. That wicked Zimri engaged in 424, which is the numerical value of the word Zarzir, 424 acts of intercourse with Cosby that day. And Pinchas waited until his strength waned from all that activity. And Pinchas did not know that it was not necessary to wait that long, because the king against whom none can rise, a reference to the Holy One, blessed be he, was with him. And it was taught in a Baraisa that Zimri engaged in intercourse 60 times until he became like an addled egg, whose contents are muddled and non-differentiated fluid, and Cosby was like a garden bed full of water. And Rav Kahana said, to underscore her disgrace resulting from her extensive sexual activity, and her seat was as wide as the area required for sowing one saw of seed, a base saw. Okay. And Rav Yosef taught the opening of her womb was a cubit. Okay, she had been around. Rav Shesha said Cosby was not her given name, rather Shavilnai, a daughter of Zur, was her real name. And why was she called Cosby? because through her actions she distorted shekiziva, which is the same root, the instructions of her father. He told her to submit only to the greatest of the children of Israel, and she submitted to the leader of a tribe. Alternatively, she was called Cosby because she said to her father, slaughter, cause, this people through me, B, as I will seduce them to engage in licentiousness. And her name was Shevilnai, and this is, as people say, in reference to a famous prostitute. Between reeds and willows, what does Shevilnai seek? Clearly she seeks licentiousness. And there is another adage, among the peels of the reeds, what does Shevilnai seek? Clearly she seeks licentiousness. She prostituted her mother. Apparently Shevilnai became a name popularly used to connote a prostitute. Since everyone refers to her as a prostitute, daughter of a prostitute, she has implicated her mother with her licentiousness. And Rabbi Yochanan says Zimri has 5 names. Zimri, and son of Salu, and Saul, and son of the Canaanite woman, and Shlumiel, son of Zuri Shaddai. And he was called Zimri because of the fact that he became like an addled egg as a result of engaging in multiple acts of intercourse. And he was called son of Salu because of the fact that he evoked Shehisli, the sins of his family. He was called Saul, Shaul in Hebrew, because of the fact that he lent Shehishul, himself to sinful matters, and he was called son of the Canaanite woman because of the fact that he performed an act of Canaan, as the Canaanites are renowned for their licentiousness. And what is his given name? Shelumiel, the son of Zuri Shaddai, is his name, the leader of the tribe of Shimon. I had intended to go further, but the hour is late, so that's a pretty good cut-off point. I should have asked for questions or comments, but I am asking for them now. And I'll just mention while I'm waiting for the questions document to reload that tomorrow we're back to our regular Friday time of noon Pacific, where we will continue and get closer to the end of this chapter 9. Okay, just a couple of questions on Sanhedrin 82. Bill, what I'm sitting here and wondering is, exile was a common punishment throughout history. Why not simply say that a criminal may be exiled if he is found guilty but cannot be executed? Not leastwise because one of the reasons exile was so common in the ancient world is that it was, in essence, a bloodless execution without support from a homeland. The likelihood of death by accident or bandits is high. Very interesting. We certainly have seen that as among the sages, issuing laws, there was excommunication, which is basically exile from the community, right? And that no Jew could do business with this person. And it very much left a person in a very precarious position. And it was a little bit like what you're describing. It could be that kind of bloodless execution because he's out there on his own and without a community to protect him, was just so exposed. And so we do have that. It's just not being raised in this context yet. But it's a good point. Thank you, Bill. And finally, Sharon, Moses married Zipporah prior to giving of the Torah. Zimri was guilty of the act after the Torah was revealed. Great answer. Absolutely right. In that sense, Moses was marrying Zipporah like any marriage under the laws of the Bnei Noach, right? In other words, we were all Bnei Noach at that point. We didn't have the laws of matrimony spelled out in the Torah. And so whatever Moses did with Zipporah did not have in any way the same prohibition attached to it as Zimri had when he copulated with Cosby in the midst of the camp after the Torah was given. Wonderful point. Thank you for that. And that's what I've got for us today. And with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, noon Pacific. All the best.